The box fell at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Naomi Blake caught it midair, heart hammering against her ribs, hands trembling as she held the old shoebox wrapped in brown paper against her chest. For a moment, she just stood there in the dark bedroom of her small Minneapolis apartment, breathing like she'd just run a mile. The closet door hung open. The high shelf where the box had lived for 15 years now sat empty, accusing. She hadn't meant to touch it. She'd only wanted a sweater. At 38, Naomi had become expert at not touching certain things. Not touching old dreams. Not touching difficult questions. Not touching the part of herself that used to believe she could be more than perpetually tired. The apartment around her was silent in that particular 3 a.m. way that makes everything feel too loud. Thin walls, old cabinets, a space that had never quite felt like home because Naomi herself had never quite felt at home in her own life. She sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the box. Didn't open it, just held it. Outside, Minneapolis was deep in late autumn. Inside, Naomi Blake was deep in the kind of exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. The kind that comes from spending 15 years putting out other people's fires while your own light slowly dims to nothing. Her job title was Assistant Coordinator at Jefferson Heights Public School, which meant she was the person who held everything together for everyone else. Angry parents? Naomi handled them. Teacher called in sick? Naomi covered. Last-minute event? Naomi organized it. Emails at 10 p.m.? Naomi answered them. People at work thought she was so organized, so dependable, such a team player. What they meant was predictable. What they meant was she never says no. What they meant was we can forget about her because she never demands to be remembered. The weight of the box in her hands felt heavier than cardboard and old paper should feel. Naomi had stopped crying years ago about the life she wasn't living. She'd developed something more efficient, a low-grade numbness that let her function beautifully while feeling almost nothing at all. Wake up too early, coffee too fast, handle other people's emergencies, come home, watch something forgettable, scroll through her phone, sleep restlessly, repeat. Functional depression, they call it. You'd never know from the outside. The box had been in that closet since she was 23. She was 38 now. 15 years of dust. 15 years of, I'll deal with that later. 15 years of convincing herself that the person she used to be, the one who dreamed of documentary photography, who wanted to travel and capture ordinary people's extraordinary stories, was just a phase. Youthful naivety, something you grow out of. But at 2:47 a.m., holding a box that had almost fallen, Naomi felt the crack in her carefully maintained numbness. She had put this box away the week after her father's first heart attack, the week she dropped out of her photography program at the community arts college, the week she came home to take care of things because her mother couldn't and there was no one else, and she was the responsible one, wasn't she? That was supposed to be temporary. Just until things settled down, she'd told herself. Just until dad's better. Just until mom's stable. Just until we're okay financially. Just until became 15 years. Her father had died 7 years ago. Her mother had moved to Oregon to live with Naomi's aunt 5 years ago. The family crisis had ended, but Naomi had somehow never given herself permission to restart the life she'd paused. She looked at the box in her hands and suddenly couldn't remember when she'd last felt truly awake. The invitation had come 3 days earlier. Naomi was in the school's main office, updating the event's calendar, when Principal Morrison stopped by her desk. "Hey, Naomi, got a minute?" She'd looked up, already mentally preparing for whatever emergency needed solving. "We're doing this end-of-year project," Morrison said, called Before and After. Students photograph places in the community that represent transformation. A revitalized park, a renovated building, that kind of thing. The photography club needs someone to help with logistics, equipment sign-outs, permission slips, that sort of thing. You interested in taking it on? Naomi's first response was automatic. "I'm pretty swamped right now, but..." Right. Morrison nodded. already turning away. I figured, I'll ask Jenkins. And that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That night, lying in bed, Naomi couldn't stop thinking about it. Photography, students with cameras, the exact thing she'd once loved, the exact thing she'd buried in a box on a high shelf. She told herself it was just logistics, not even real photography work, just administrative support. But the thought kept circling back. What if I said yes? She tried to sleep and couldn't. Got up for water. Decided to grab that sweater from the closet because the apartment was cold, and she was cold, and everything felt cold lately. Opened the closet door. Reached up. The box shifted. And suddenly there it was, in her hands. At 2:47 a.m., 15 years of avoidance turned into 8 pounds of cardboard and memory. Naomi stared at it for a long time. Then, with hands that didn't quite feel like her own, she lifted the lid. The smell hit her first. Old paper, dust, and something else. Some scent memory she couldn't quite name but recognized in her bones. Inside the box, a laminated badge from a community photography workshop in Chicago when she was 20, her face young and hopeful in the tiny photo. An empty film canister, dented and faded. A torn ticket stub from a street festival where she'd shown her work for the first time. A cheap keychain shaped like a camera, a gift to herself when she got her first small student grant. A coffee shop napkin with a ring stain, from an important conversation with her best friend about art and purpose and what it means to really live. A pair of simple hoop earrings she used to wear when she wanted to feel like an artist. Naomi picked up each object slowly, carefully, like they were made of something more fragile than they were. The badge brought back a full memory. Walking through Chicago neighborhoods with a camera around her neck, talking to strangers, feeling curious about everything. Feeling alive in a way she'd forgotten was possible. The film canister, staying up until 3 a.m. in a darkroom, waiting for images to appear in the developer tray like magic, like proof that attention and patience could make invisible things visible. The ticket stub, her photos hanging in a small community center, 3 people she didn't know standing in front of one she'd taken of an elderly man feeding pigeons, and one of them saying, "This made me cry. How did you see him like that?" The keychain, buying it at a thrift store with her grant money, feeling like a real photographer even though she was just starting, feeling like she belonged to something larger than herself. The napkin, her friend Sarah saying, "Naomi, you see people the way most people look at sunsets. Like you're amazed by them. Don't lose that." The earrings, putting them on before going out to shoot, like armor, like a promise to herself that she was serious about this dream. Each object was ordinary. Together, they were the map of a person she used to be. Naomi sat on her bedroom floor at 3:15 a.m., surrounded by these fragments of her abandoned self, and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in years: grief. Not for her father, she'd grieved him properly, but for this other loss, the one she'd caused herself. She'd told herself, for 15 years, that she'd made the right choice. The responsible choice. The adult choice. But sitting there, holding a cheap camera keychain, Naomi realized the truth. She hadn't made a choice at all. She'd made a sacrifice, and then she'd never allowed herself to unsacrifice it. The question that kept rising, insistent as nausea: what if I'd never stopped? Not what if her dad hadn't gotten sick. That wasn't the question. He got sick. She came home. That part made sense. But what about after? What about the 7 years since he died? The 5 years since her mom moved away? What about all that time when the crisis was over, but she kept living like it wasn't? Naomi put the objects back in the box carefully, closed the lid, but didn't put it back in the closet. Instead, she placed it on her dresser where she'd see it every morning. By 4 a.m., she still hadn't slept. But something had shifted. The box was out. The door she'd kept closed for 15 years had cracked open. And in the morning, she was going to have to decide what to do about that. The next day, Naomi moved through work in a haze. Every time she passed the hallway where students were gathering for the photography club meeting, Something in her chest tightened. She told herself it didn't matter. Jenkins was handling it. It was fine. She had plenty of other work. But then, during lunch, she saw Harper. Harper was 14, quiet, the kind of kid who sat in the back and drew in the margins of her notebook. Naomi had noticed her before because Harper had that particular quality of trying to be invisible that Naomi recognized, the quality of someone who decided they didn't deserve to take up space. Harper was sitting alone in the cafeteria, sketching something. Naomi, carrying her own sad desk lunch, paused. "What are you drawing?" Harper looked up, startled, then showed the notebook hesitantly. It was a portrait of another student, rendered in careful, observant detail. It was good, really good. "This is beautiful," Naomi said, and meant it. Harper shrugged. "It's just like practice." "Are you in the photography club? For the before and after project?" Another shrug. "I wanted to sign up, but that's for people who are actually good at it." The words hit Naomi like a slap. Not because they were surprising, but because they were so familiar. The exact voice she'd been listening to for 15 years. That's for people who are actually good. That's for people who deserve it. That's not for you. "Harper," Naomi heard herself say, "what if I told you that the people who are actually good at things are just the ones who decided to do it anyway?" Harper looked at her skeptically. "But what if I mess up?" "Then you mess up. And then you try again. That's literally how you get good." Harper considered this. "Did you ever want to do photography?" The question caught Naomi off guard. She could have deflected. Should have, probably. Instead, she said, "I did. I was studying it, actually. Then I stopped." "Why?" "Because." Naomi paused, the truth forming itself as she spoke it. "Because I was scared I wasn't good enough. And I let that fear win." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Harper asked, quietly, "Do you regret it?" And Naomi, looking at this 14-year-old girl who was standing at the exact crossroads she'd stood at 15 years ago, felt the full weight of the answer. Every single day. That night, Naomi sat at her small kitchen table with the box in front of her again. But this time, she wasn't just looking at the objects. She was reading them like instructions. The badge. You used to be someone who walked toward curiosity. The film canister. You used to be patient enough to wait for beauty to reveal itself. The ticket stub. You used to show your work. You used to let people see what you saw. The keychain. You used to believe you belonged in this world of making and seeing. The napkin. Someone once saw something special in the way you looked at people. The earrings. You used to wear armor. You used to prepare for battle. You used to fight for your dreams. The box wasn't teaching her something new. It was reminding her of what she'd always known but chosen to forget. That she'd once been brave. That she'd once believed her vision mattered. That she'd once felt alive in her own skin. And the most painful realization, she'd blamed circumstances for 15 years, but the truth was simpler and harder. No one had stopped her from going back to photography after the crisis passed. She'd stopped herself, because somewhere along the way, she'd started to believe the lie that responsible adults don't get to have dreams. They just have obligations. The box was proof that she'd once rejected that lie completely. Naomi sat there for a long time, touching each object like a meditation. And slowly, a decision began to form. Not dramatic, not life-overturning, but real. What if I stopped pretending that person is dead? What if the woman who took those photos, who saw beauty in ordinary people, who wore hoop earrings and felt alive? What if she didn't die? What if she's just been waiting? Naomi picked up her phone, typed an email to Principal Morrison. Subject: Photography Club. "Hi, Principal Morrison. I know I said I was too busy, but I've been thinking about it, and I'd actually like to co-coordinate the photography club project with Jenkins, if there's still room. I have some experience with photography from years ago, and I think I could contribute more than just logistics. Let me know if this is possible." Naomi. She stared at the draft for 5 minutes, heart pounding. Then she hit send before she could talk herself out of it. Morrison's response came the next morning. "Sure, if you're certain you have the bandwidth. First meeting is Thursday after school." Naomi read it 3 times, feeling something she couldn't quite name. Not excitement exactly, more like terror mixed with recognition. The feeling of stepping toward the edge of something you've avoided so long you forgot what it felt like to move toward it instead of away. Thursday came. Naomi showed up to the photography club meeting in the art room, carrying the only camera she owned, a basic digital one she'd bought years ago for documentation purposes and barely used. Jenkins was there, friendly and efficient, already going through the equipment. "Glad you're joining," he said. "These kids could use someone who actually knows cameras beyond Instagram filters." Naomi almost laughed. She wasn't sure she knew cameras anymore either. 15 students. Some eager, some skeptical, some clearly just there for extra credit. And Harper, sitting in the back, who looked up when Naomi entered and gave a small, tentative smile. Jenkins explained the project. Choose a location in the neighborhood that represents transformation. Document it thoughtfully. Think about before and after, change, resilience, renewal. "Any location?" one student asked. "Anywhere that means something to you," Naomi found herself saying. "Somewhere you have a relationship with. A park, a street corner, a building. Somewhere that changed, or somewhere that changed you." The students nodded, some taking notes. Then Harper raised her hand. "What if the place we pick isn't pretty?" Naomi looked at her. "Some of the most important photos aren't pretty. They're honest." Jenkins added, "Exactly. We're not looking for postcards. We're looking for truth." After the meeting, as students filed out, Harper lingered. "Ms. Blake, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Where would you photograph if you were doing the project?" The question landed hard. Naomi's first instinct was to deflect, to say something about how she wasn't a student, how it wasn't her project. But she looked at Harper's face, so hopeful, so tentative, and decided to try something new. Honesty. "There's a hospital parking lot," Naomi said slowly, "where my dad was hospitalized 15 years ago. I haven't been back since he died. But I think I'd photograph that. Because that's where everything changed for me. Not just because I lost him eventually, but because that's where I made the choice to come home. And I never quite left, even after he was gone." Harper absorbed this. "That sounds really hard." It was. "It is. But would you really go back there? With a camera? Would she?" Naomi thought about the box on her dresser, about the badge and the film canister and the earrings, about the woman who used to be brave enough to point a camera at difficult things. "Yeah," she heard herself say. "Yeah, I think I would." The challenge emerged naturally, not assigned by a mentor, but created by the box itself. If she was going to help these students face difficult locations with cameras, she needed to do it too. Not as an example. They didn't need to know, but as a test, to see if that person in the box was still alive somewhere inside her. The next Saturday, Naomi drove to Fairview Hospital. She hadn't been there since the funeral. 7 years. The building looked different. They'd renovated the entrance, added new signage. But the parking lot was the same. She parked in almost the exact spot where she'd gotten the call 15 years ago that her father had been admitted. Naomi sat in the car for 20 minutes, camera in her lap, breathing. This was where it happened. Not his death. That came later, at a different hospital, after a second, final heart attack. But this was where her old life stopped. This was where 23-year-old Naomi, art student with a camera and dreams, became Naomi Blake, the woman who handles things. The weight in her chest felt enormous. But then she remembered Harper's question. Would you really go back there? And she thought, what am I teaching her if I don't? Naomi got out of the car. She stood in the parking lot, camera hanging around her neck like it used to, and looked at the building. The entrance, the tree that had been there then and was still there now, bigger. A couple embracing near the doors. A nurse helping an elderly man sit on a bench. She raised the camera, looked through the viewfinder, and for the first time in 15 years, Naomi Blake really saw something again. The tree first, its branches reaching up, patient, indifferent to human crisis. It had been there through everything. Her father's admission, his death, 7 years of her avoiding this place, and now her return. Constant. Growing. Click. Then the couple. The woman was crying, the man holding her. Naomi didn't know their story, but she recognized the posture. The way you hold someone when the world is falling apart. The way someone held her once. Click. The nurse, an elderly man. The gentleness of it. The everyday mercy. Someone doing their job, but also caring. The way the man smiled at her, trusting. Click. Naomi took 12 photos in the parking lot. None of them were of dramatic things. They were of moments. Small, human, true moments. The kind of things she used to see everywhere before she taught herself to stop looking. And standing there, camera warm in her hands, Naomi understood something. This place had meant loss, but it had also meant love. Her father got sick, yes, but she came home. She showed up. She held her mother's hand in this parking lot. She made calls. She was present. That younger version of herself, the one she'd been mourning, she hadn't disappeared here. She'd transformed. Maybe not in the way she wanted, but in a way that mattered. The pain of this place didn't erase that. It contained it. When she got back in the car, Naomi was crying. But it wasn't the trapped, circular grief she'd been carrying. It was something cleaner, something closer to release. The photos from the hospital parking lot were on her laptop when Harper came by after school on Monday to ask advice about her own project location. "You actually went," Harper said, looking at the screen. "I actually went. How did it feel?" Naomi considered this. Hard, but also, like I was finally doing something I should have done years ago. Harper nodded. Then, quietly, "I picked my location. It's the building where my parents used to fight before they divorced. I haven't been near it in 2 years." Naomi looked at this 14-year-old with new respect. "That's brave." "I'm terrified." "Good. That probably means it's important." They sat together, looking at Naomi's photos. After a while, Harper said, "Ms. Blake, why did you stop?" "With photography." The real question, the one Naomi had been avoiding for 15 years. "Because," she said slowly, "I believed that being responsible meant giving up everything that made me feel alive. I thought adults had to choose. Either you're practical or you're passionate. Never both. And now I think that's bullshit." The word slipped out. Naomi almost apologized, then decided not to. "Now I think the most irresponsible thing I did was abandon the part of myself that knew how to see beauty. Because without that part, I wasn't really living. I was just managing." Harper absorbed this. "So what changed?" Naomi thought about the box, about the objects inside, about holding them at 2:47 a.m. and realizing they weren't nostalgia. They were a message from her past self. A reminder. A challenge. "I found proof," she said finally, "that I used to be brave. And I decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life pretending that person never existed." That evening, Naomi took the box from her dresser. But instead of putting it back in the closet, she did something different. She bought a clear storage container. She arranged the objects inside carefully. The badge, the film canister, the ticket stub, the keychain, the napkin, the earrings. She added something new, one of the printed photos from the hospital parking lot. Then she placed the box on a low shelf, eye level, where she'd see it every day. Not hidden, not buried, present. She put on the hoop earrings. They felt strange after so many years, but also familiar, like coming home. And she made a decision. Next semester, she'd enroll in a weekend photography workshop. Just one, just to start. Not to become a professional photographer. Maybe that dream was from another lifetime. But to honor the part of herself that saw the world through a lens of curiosity and compassion. The part that knew how to look at ordinary people and see something extraordinary. The part that had been waiting, patient as a tree, for her to come back. The end-of-year exhibition happened on a Thursday evening in December. The school gym was transformed into a gallery. Student photos hung on temporary walls, fairy lights strung overhead. Naomi walked through slowly, seeing the world through her students' eyes. a renovated playground that used to be neglected, a corner store that changed ownership and became a community hub, an empty lot where something new was being built, and Harper's series, the building where her parents fought, photographed at different times of day. Dawn, noon, dusk, night. The same building, but different. In one shot, children played in front of it. In another, an elderly woman sat on the steps, feeding birds. The building hadn't changed, but Harper had changed how she saw it. That was the transformation. "It's good," Naomi told her. Harper beamed. "I was really scared to go back. But then I remembered what you said about doing it anyway." Other students showed their work, proud and nervous. Parents commented. Morrison gave a speech about resilience and perspective. And Naomi stood at the edge of it all, feeling something she hadn't felt in so long she'd forgotten the name for it. Useful in a way that fed her soul, not just her sense of obligation. At the end of the evening, as people filed out, Morrison approached her. "Jenkins says you were the real driving force behind this, that your feedback was invaluable." Naomi shrugged, uncomfortable with praise. "I just related to what they were trying to do." "Well, I'd love to have you lead the club officially next year. If you're interested." Next year. The future. A version of it that included photography, students, meaning. Not instead of her regular job, but alongside it. Both / and not either / or. "I'd like that," Naomi said. That night, in her small apartment with thin walls and old cabinets, Naomi sat on her bed and looked at the clear box on her shelf. The objects inside caught the light. The camera keychain, the earrings she was wearing, the photo from the hospital parking lot. She thought about Harper, about the students, about the way transformation isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just the decision to stop hiding the parts of yourself that make you feel alive. Her father was still gone. That didn't change. Her 20s were still lost to crisis and responsibility. That didn't change either. But what changed was this. She finally understood that honoring the person she used to be wasn't the same as living in the past. It was about bringing that person's courage forward, letting her exist here, now, in this life. Naomi picked up her camera. She bought a better one, used, with her first paycheck after signing up for the workshop, and took a photo of the box on the shelf. The light was soft. The objects inside were visible, but not sharply focused. It looked like memory. It looked like hope. She captioned it in her mind. "The box I almost left in the closet. The woman I almost left behind." And then she thought about next semester. The workshop. Harper's continued growth. Her own continued growth. Maybe, eventually, a small project of her own, documenting other people who'd paused their dreams for responsibility, asking them what they'd found in their own forgotten boxes. Outside, Minneapolis was settling into winter. Inside, Naomi Blake was settling into herself. The exhaustion was still there, work was still demanding, life was still complicated. But underneath it now was something else. A pilot light that hadn't gone out, just dimmed, waiting for someone to notice it was still burning. She'd noticed. Finally. And that changed everything. Sometimes what imprisons a tired mind isn't the weight of the present, but the piece of the past she hid so, well, she forgot who she might have become. Healing begins the day you have the courage to take that box off the shelf and let those memories stop being shame and start being direction. The woman you were isn't dead. She's been waiting, patient as a tree, ready for you to remember that you were brave once and can be brave again. This story reminds us that sometimes what imprisons a tired mind isn't the weight of the present, but the piece of the past we hid so, well, we forgot who we might have become. What are you keeping in a box on a high shelf? What version of yourself are you pretending is dead? If this story touched something deep in you, write the word brave in the comments. Share what city you're watching from. Your journey might inspire someone else. Subscribe and hit the bell because every week I share stories that can transform how you see yourself. Click the card on screen for another powerful story. And remember, the woman you were isn't gone. She's been waiting, patient as a tree, ready for you to remember.